Everyone talks about freedom. The freedom to choose your job, your path, your beliefs, the clothes you wear, the city you inhabit. But there is one fundamental area where the illusion of choice is most brutally exposed, and that is in your most intimate life, in the forced trajectory of your personal commitment. Look around you right now. Everyone is pairing up. They are settling down. They are locking in. You are told this is a natural human desire, an organic path to happiness, the ultimate fulfillment of adulthood. You are assured by every film, every song, every cultural mandate that this pairing is entirely your choice. Nicolo Machiavelli, the cold master strategist of power, the man who viewed the state not as a moral entity, but as a machine for self-preservation, would simply laugh at this assessment. Because Machiavelli understood that society, the state, the global economic structure, and every established power mechanism does not merely encourage you to be in a committed, long-term relationship. They require it. They strategize for it. They need you trapped. This is not romance, this is statecraft. This principle of strategic control operates everywhere, regardless of borders or cultural differences. It is a universal mechanism of power that transcends geography. We are uncovering a secret truth that affects every life, every decision, every aspiration. Tell us right now, where are you watching this analysis of power unfold? Drop your city and state in the comments, confirming that this hidden reality is universally applied. The modern mind is conditioned to see the relationship as an emotional contract, a matter of the heart. Machiavelli saw it as a social contract, a matter of control. The reason is simple and utterly ruthless. A committed partner is a citizen with reduced mobility, reduced volatility, and a drastically reduced capacity for independent, revolutionary thought or action. An individual unbound by domestic commitment is a random variable in the vast equation of state control. They are unpredictable. They can leave tomorrow. They can change careers on a whim. They can join a protest, dedicate their lives to radical ideology, or simply decide to live entirely outside the consumer system. They possess the greatest threat to stability, radical flexibility. The moment you commit, that flexibility evaporates, replaced by what Machiavelli identified as the most effective chain on the human spirit: shared liability. The first strategy society deploys to ensure your commitment is the magnificent construction of the economic anchor. A single individual is a minor expense to the system. A committed couple, especially one aspiring to the established norms of life, becomes a magnificent engine of economic stability. They are not merely buying a house. They are committing to a 30-year mortgage, a debt that ties them quite literally to the fortunes of the state's economy. This shared liability is the ultimate insurance policy for the ruling class. Consider the consumption pattern. The single person needs a small apartment, basic insurance, and food. The committed couple chasing the societal ideal requires a wedding, which is an immediate injection of capital into the service industry. They require a larger home, furniture, 2 cars, joint insurance policies, and an unending stream of shared domestic products designed to maintain the fortress of their private lives. Every commitment, every shared bank account, every co-signed loan, every purchase of a matching appliance is a nail hammered into the coffin of their revolutionary potential. The state does not need you to be happy. It needs you to be a reliable debtor, a compliant consumer, and a predictable taxpayer. The couple, far more than the individual, satisfies all these requirements with terrifying efficiency. Machiavelli understood that people are rarely motivated by abstract ideals, but are almost always motivated by immediate material concerns and the fear of losing what they possess. When a man is single, he fears losing only his independence. When he is partnered, he fears losing the relationship, the home, the social standing, and half of his assets in a potential dissolution. And when children arrive, the economic anchor becomes an emotional vice. The need to maintain the status quo to protect the stability of the domestic unit overwhelms the desire for political resistance, economic rebellion, or even simple radical self-reformation. A person with a mortgage, 2 car payments, and children in private schooling is far too busy servicing their debts to seriously question the structure of the society that allows them to service those debts. Society needs you to be perpetually preoccupied with maintenance, and the committed relationship is the supreme maintenance task. The second foundational reason society pushes this trap is the absolute necessity of social predictability. The state fears chaos, and the solitary individual, operating outside the established nuclear mold, is an agent of chaos. The committed relationship, however, is a model of routine and social conformity. It generates predictable timelines: dating, engagement, marriage, family, retirement. It dictates social circles, holiday schedules, and even acceptable leisure activities. The partnered individual is generally more socially available to established institutions. They attend the structured family events, they participate in the organized community groups, they adhere to the predictable routines required to manage a shared life. They become a stable data point in the state's massive census of control. They are accounted for, their location is known, their income is trackable, their motivations are comprehensible. Stability for the family unit. The single, uncommitted individual, by contrast, is a statistical anomaly. They might be traveling unexpectedly. They might be dedicating excessive time to intense, specialized pursuits that do not involve traditional consumption. They might be politically active on fringe movements because they have few immediate responsibilities tying them to the center ground. They are harder to track, harder to influence, and harder to predict in moments of social unrest. Machiavelli taught that a prince must always seek to minimize the variables and maximize the known outcomes. The mass promotion of the committed relationship is the state's most effective psychological operation for creating millions of predictable, low-variable citizens. But the most potent reason society needs you trapped in a relationship is the strategic neutralization of the maverick. Machiavelli revered the man of exceptional ability and high ambition, but he recognized that this individual posed the greatest potential threat to established order. The unbound genius, the radical thinker, the fiercely ambitious leader, or the person dedicated purely to self-mastery, is politically volatile. Such an individual has the time, energy, and mental space to contemplate the deep flaws in the system and the ruthlessness required to exploit or overthrow them. What neutralizes this independent threat more effectively than absorbing their ambition into domesticity? The moment that energy is redirected from conquering the external world, the political arena, the corporate structure, the philosophical domain, into maintaining the harmony of the internal private world, their threat level drops precipitously. The energy once destined for challenging the political regime or founding a competing empire is now spent on resolving domestic disputes, scheduling activities, and balancing the overwhelming logistics of a shared life. This is the brilliant simplicity of the societal trap. It does not try to destroy the genius, it domesticates it. It takes the fire of ambition and uses it to cook dinner. The hours that might have been dedicated to deep strategic planning, revolutionary networking, or profound philosophical insight are now devoted to relationship maintenance. The emotional capacity needed for ruthless statecraft is instead consumed by ensuring the emotional stability of a partner and children. The commitment dilutes the focus. It replaces singular ambition with dual obligation. The man who might have become a powerful self-made king is now a reliable provider. The woman who might have focused solely on intellectual or political ascendancy is now anchored by shared responsibility. Their identity is no longer purely defined by their capacity for individual greatness, but by their role within the sanctioned social unit. They are no longer a solitary peak. They are part of a fortified but predictable wall. Machiavelli would note that the greatest political advantage is gained by offering the appearance of reward while extracting a crucial cost. Society rewards the committed couple with social acceptance, perceived security, and the psychological comfort of conformity. But the cost extracted is profound. A lifetime supply of risk aversion, the surrender of radical flexibility, and the permanent redirection of the most powerful, potentially destabilizing human energy, raw, singular ambition, into private maintenance. Moreover, the relationship acts as a double-sided control mechanism. It means that any pressure applied by the state or the economy against one individual is instantly amplified because it jeopardizes the entire unit. Threaten the job of a single man, and he might fight or leave the country. Threaten the job of a married man with a family, and he is infinitely more likely to comply, accept lower wages, or endure mistreatment, because the consequences of resistance are now catastrophic to 2 or more lives, not just one. The relationship turns every individual into a hostage, and the state, the great power, only has to apply pressure to the one to control the actions of the pair. This is a fundamental principle of effective low-cost control. We must understand that this is not a conspiracy orchestrated in secret meetings. It is the self-preservation instinct of society manifesting as culture. Culture, media, entertainment, and even religious institutions are the agents of this strategy, endlessly promoting the narrative that the coupled state is the only legitimate path to happiness and maturity. They celebrate commitment not because it creates better individuals, but because it creates more compliant citizens. They valorize stability because stability means predictability, and predictability is the cornerstone of control. Machiavelli's counsel was always to observe the outcome, not the intention. If you observe that nearly all powerful institutions relentlessly push one specific lifestyle choice, you must ask, who benefits from my choice to accept this limitation? The answer is rarely the individual, but almost universally the system that requires your predictable compliance and your economic anchoring. The relationship therefore becomes the first and most effective fortress the state builds around the dangerous human heart. It is a subtle, magnificent trap constructed entirely of mutual liability and social expectation. We have dissected the system's motive for keeping you anchored, economically bound, and strategically neutralized. But recognizing the trap is only the first step toward genuine strategic independence. We are building a community of strategic thinkers who refuse to live unconsciously. This knowledge is rare. Secure your place among the few who understand how power truly operates. Hit the subscribe button right now, join this movement, and like this video to signal that you understand the rules of the game. If society wants you trapped by conformity, what is the single powerful phrase you carry as a weapon of strategic freedom against this pervasive cultural demand? Suggest a single potent declaration in the comments that acts as your personal manifesto against being neutralized by societal expectation. We have dissected the system's motive. Next, we must turn the lens to a terrifying internal realization. The deepest mechanism of your control often sleeps right beside you, and sometimes the guard of the societal fortress is your own partner. Prepare for the moment the mirror cracks, revealing the true face of the personal strategist in your life, and how the one you trust most might be the inadvertent enforcer of your limitations. The next analysis will shift everything you thought you knew about personal commitment. Do not miss the moment we reveal that crucial vulnerability. The greatest trick ever pulled on the individual was convincing him that commitment was a choice, not a constraint. We are instructed from childhood that the purpose of life is not power, not influence, not sovereignty over oneself, but finding that single, perfect anchor, that person who will hold the line when the world turns to chaos. This is not the language of freedom, it is the rhetoric of statecraft. Machiavelli, the master architect of manipulation, understood that a population anchored by mutual obligations, shared debt, and emotional dependency is a population easily governed. An isolated man is dangerous. He is mobile, unpredictable, and capable of sudden, ambitious flights. A man tethered by a shared mortgage, joint dependence, and a social schedule is a magnificent engine of predictable mediocrity. His decisions are no longer purely his own. They are calculated compromises between his ambition and the stability of his household. The moment he accepts the chains of conventional relationship, not the joy of partnership, but the necessary structural burden society places upon it, he trades his infinite potential for a finite, manageable predictability. And society, sensing the ease of control, applauds his sacrifice, calling it maturity, calling it love. But it is simply control masked in sentiment. Tell me now, from which city are you observing this truth? The mechanism by which society enforces this predictable stagnation is brilliantly subtle, rooted primarily in economics and the systemic aversion to risk. Consider the modern man who seeks to escape his current station, who harbors the ambition to launch a business, pivot careers, or seek fortune in distant lands. If he stands alone, the friction of movement is low. He may pack his possessions into a single vehicle and vanish, risking only his own comfort and survival. This level of risk-taking is hostile to the state, for the state relies on stable taxpayers, consistent consumers, and reliable employees. But the moment the individual enters the sanctioned, long-term relationship, the entire calculus shifts. Suddenly, the ambition is no longer singular. It involves a spouse, perhaps children, joint bank accounts, and most crucially, the massive shared debt structure of the modern home. The mortgage is not merely a loan, It is the most effective societal trap ever devised. It binds two people to a geography, to a monthly commitment that necessitates consistent low-risk income, and to a decades-long future where sudden, revolutionary action is fiscally impossible. The unpredictable entrepreneur instantly transforms into the predictable salaryman. The man who might have been a threat to the established economic order is now its most reliable consumer, forever chasing the next promotion simply to maintain the baseline comfort established by his commitment. He believes he chose a home. Machiavelli observes that he chose a prison with excellent amenities. This economic disarmament is compounded by the systematic destruction of the individual's optionality. Optionality is the true currency of power, the ability to choose a better path, to walk away from a bad deal, to take advantage of fleeting opportunities. The relationship, as structured by societal mandate, reduces optionality to near zero. Every decision, from career change to conflict resolution, must be run through a joint committee. This is inefficient by design, slowing the subject's response time to environmental changes and opportunities. The state favors the plodding ox over the swift hawk. The hawk, unburdened, hunts where it pleases. The ox, harnessed to the plow, follows the furrow. Furthermore, the reliance on dual incomes often means that both partners are equally tethered to the system. If one attempts a high-risk venture, the survival of the entire family unit is jeopardized. The pressure applied by the partner, often genuine fear or concern masked as love, acts as a decentralized enforcement mechanism for societal conformity. The individual doesn't fear the government. He fears disappointing his spouse, losing the security of the life they built together, and most potently failing the children. The emotional commitment becomes the governor on the engine of ambition, and the system watches, content, because the leash is invisible, made of sentimentality, not steel. The subtle genius of this trap lies in the psychological erosion it necessitates. To maintain the fragile balance of a heavily committed, debt-laden relationship, the individual must constantly negotiate his own temperament and ambition. The sharp edges that make a man formidable, ruthless focus, independent self-reliance, comfort with solitude and nonconformity, must be systematically filed down. He must become agreeable, accommodating, and perpetually present. This shift is heralded by society as maturing, settling down, or finding balance. In Machiavellian terms, it is disarmament through domestication. The domestic environment demands a psychological shift from outward conquest to inward maintenance. The individual's focus shifts from mastering the external world to managing the internal harmony of the household. His primary strategic concerns become trivialities: the distribution of chores, the logistics of school drop-offs, the management of familial grievances. These tasks, while necessary, consume the intellectual bandwidth and strategic energy that might otherwise be directed toward challenging the system or acquiring genuine external power. The man who spends his evening deliberating on the quarterly budget projection of his company is formidable. The man who spends his evening negotiating whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher has been neutered of his strategic edge. Moreover, society expertly weaponizes the fear of stigma against those who reject this structure. The man who chooses independence, who prioritizes his self-sovereignty over the safety of the relationship, is not merely ignored. He is actively pathologized. He is labeled the commitment phobe, the selfish bachelor, or the eternal adolescent. These labels are not observations. They are subtle warnings to others and psychological deterrents to the target. The message is clear. The cost of independence is social exile. Machiavelli knew that men rarely tolerate isolation and will choose servitude in a crowd over sovereignty and solitude. The fear of being the outsider is often a more powerful motivator than the allure of genuine freedom. Therefore, even when a relationship becomes detrimental, toxic, or strategically draining, the individual often clings to it desperately, not because of love, but because stepping outside the structure means facing the terrifying landscape of being socially unanchored, judged, and alone. Society has successfully convinced the individual that being trapped is safer than being free. The consequences of this pervasive relationship mandate extend into the realm of political stability. A man whose primary loyalties are directed toward his immediate family and his domestic environment is less likely to engage in disruptive political or social action. His calculus is always centered on preservation, not revolution. If he participates in a protest, his job, and thus the mortgage, is at risk. If he challenges authority too overtly, the stability of his children's education or social standing is compromised. This is the ultimate societal dividend of the traditional relationship structure. It creates a buffer of stability against radical change. Every married homeowner is a small, decentralized bastion of conservatism, regardless of their stated politics, because their material interests align fundamentally with the status quo. They need stability. Instability threatens their massive shared investment in property and future security. The state doesn't need to employ thought police when the financial structure and the emotional commitment already police the subject's behavior 24 hours a day. This pressure to conform is amplified by the myth of shared weakness, the idea that the highest form of strength is derived from mutual dependence. We are told that vulnerability is strength. Machiavelli would laugh at this contemporary sentiment, recognizing it as weakness packaged for consumption by the masses. True power avoids dependence. It seeks self-reliance. But the mandated relationship model demands dependence. It requires the man to share his financial burdens, his emotional liabilities, and his strategic vulnerabilities with another person whose goals may diverge over time. This pooling of risk is framed as support, but it is actually the multiplication of points of failure. The individual who shares all his weaknesses has given an external party leverage over his entire existence. Should the partnership dissolve or simply turn hostile, every shared secret, every financial detail, and every emotional vulnerability becomes potential ammunition. The fear of this ultimate exposure keeps the individual docile and compliant within the relationship structure, even long past its natural expiration. He stays, not out of passion, but out of fear of the strategic fallout of departure. We must recognize that society does not simply tolerate relationships. It structurally favors and subsidizes them, reinforcing the boundaries of the trap. Tax codes are optimized for joint filers. Insurance benefits are weighted toward dependence. Social celebrations, holidays, weddings, parties, are structured around couples and families. The single, independent person is often treated as an anomaly, an incomplete unit, or an imposition on the standardized social matrix. This constant systemic pressure marginalizes the choice of independence, making it economically and socially punitive. The individual is driven into the relationship not by genuine, irresistible choice, but by the gravitational pull of societal convenience and economic efficiency. The system ensures that the path of least resistance leads directly into the structure of control. This is the deeper, more dangerous layer of the Machiavellian analysis. The state must maintain the illusion that the relationship is the ultimate source of personal happiness and fulfillment, distracting the individual from the pursuit of true, external power. If the subject is fully invested in optimizing his domestic life, the perfect garden, the perfect vacation, the perfect relationship status, he will not look up to question the structure of the state or the limits placed upon his ambition. The domestic arena becomes a controlled field of play where small victories, a successful anniversary, a child's achievement, are substituted for the grand, high-stakes contests of power, influence, and self-sovereignty. The energy that could challenge principalities is instead spent decorating the principality's approved cage. The man believes he is building a legacy of love. Society believes he is simply fulfilling his function as a predictable anchor in the machinery of the state. The key lesson here is vigilance. The chains are not visible, but they are absolutely functional. The moment the individual confuses stability with stagnation, or commitment with constraint, he begins the slow, inevitable slide toward being a perfectly managed asset of the system. His strength is converted into reliability. His ambition is distilled into incremental earning power. His freedom is exchanged for security. And all this is done under the banner of love, maturity, and responsibility. The man is led to believe that the greatest honor is to be indispensable to his small unit, ignoring the fact that his indispensability within that unit makes him entirely expendable to the greater political machine. This is the precise strategic utility of the socially mandated relationship. It takes the most dangerous element of society, the free, ambitious man, and transforms him, willingly, into a docile, predictable guardian of the status quo. The forces working against true individual sovereignty are subtle, pervasive, and wrapped in comforting rhetoric. We have explored the economic bonds and the psychological disarmament that make the trapped man the perfect subject for the state. But there is a final, critical layer to this structure of control: the existential cost, the ultimate price paid by the soul for trading freedom for the illusion of safety. This final truth is what society desperately needs you to ignore. Now, internalize this power dynamic. When you recognize the trap, you gain leverage. Prove that you see the strings being pulled. I want you to assert your awareness in the comments. Write this phrase precisely: the mortgage is the true leash. By asserting this, you solidify this crucial understanding in your mind and join a collective that sees beyond the veneer of social necessity. We are just halfway through this strategic analysis. To ensure you receive the final devastating piece of this Machiavellian framework, the part that details the ultimate psychological tool used to maintain the relationship structure, you must secure your access. Press the subscribe button right now. Connect yourself to this continuous flow of strategic knowledge. Demonstrate your commitment to understanding true power by liking this video. Do not let this vital information dissolve into the noise of the internet. Next time, we peel back the final layer of control. We will explore the single most crippling psychological weakness that society exploits to keep you dependent, even when the relationship has become strategically ruinous. Prepare yourself to understand the true cost of emotional security and why the fear of being truly free is the state's greatest weapon. This final insight will fundamentally change how you view partnership and personal sovereignty. Get ready. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes the silence he craves is not peace, but the quiet of a strategically placed cage. He looks at the landscape of his existence and sees not freedom, but a well-manicured prison yard, built for him, by him, yet necessary for the stability of the entire structure around him. The subtle, invisible chains of commitment, obligation, and emotional debt are not merely personal burdens. They are the fundamental pillars of the state. We have explored the architecture of this trap, detailing how the powerful benefit from neutralizing the ambitious, rendering the dangerous individual safe, domestic, and predictable. But we must now confront the ultimate betrayal, the cost of this societal stability, paid in the currency of your unrealized potential. Look closely at the man who sacrificed his strategic edge for comfort. Observe his demeanor, his softened ambition, the subtle narrowing of his field of vision. This domesticated individual, once a potential disruptor to the system, has been successfully converted into its most reliable unit of production and consumption. His focus has been expertly redirected away from challenging the structures of power and toward maintaining his own small, predictable structure: the home, the mortgage, the family. And before we delve into the final, inescapable mechanics of this societal entrapment, I want you to consider the sheer scale of this strategic operation. From where in the world are you witnessing this final dismantling of the illusion? The final phase of this Machiavellian control mechanism is not just emotional, it is logistical, bureaucratic, and financial. Society ensures you are trapped not just by love, but by law and ledger. They have perfected the art of making the exit more devastating than the stay. Machiavelli often spoke of the importance of fortune and the necessity of anticipating the unpredictable. But in the modern domesticated arrangement, the state has eliminated fortune entirely, replacing it with ironclad predictability. The state views the relationship not as a union of two autonomous people, but as a contract to secure two permanent taxpayers and consumers, ensuring future citizens are raised under controlled conditions, indoctrinated into the same system of stability and submission. The financial entanglement is the most sophisticated leash. The accumulation of shared assets, the house, the joint accounts, the future retirement funds, are all deliberately designed to raise the financial cost of divorce exponentially. This is not accidental. It is engineered resistance. The strategic placement of debt and ownership ensures that breaking the bond requires a self-inflicted financial wound so deep that it paralyzes the individual for a decade or more. Why is this essential for the ruling class? Because the ambitious, self-reliant individual with disposable time and capital is inherently dangerous to the status quo. He has the resources to think beyond survival, to question authority, to innovate outside established channels, and most importantly, to challenge the distribution of power. But the man who is perpetually paying two mortgages, alimony, and child support, is not a threat. He is a compliant debt slave. His focus is entirely on recouping losses, not on acquiring true power. The strategic irony is that the moment the man seeks autonomy, the moment he tries to exit the cage, the state transforms from being a neutral observer into an active enforcer of his dependency. The legal system, often framed as protecting the vulnerable, strategically acts as an economic leveling mechanism, transferring wealth and time commitment from the high-earning, high-potential individual to the one who is dependent on the system for security. The prince, attempting to reclaim his strategic freedom, finds his fortune stripped and his energy diverted into endless legal defense, rendering him strategically impotent. Machiavelli taught that a prince must maintain his own state and fortune. The man trapped in a destructive relationship is perpetually losing both, and the state facilitates the stripping. The children, while infinitely valuable on a personal level, become the ultimate political hostage. Their presence ensures the man can never truly disappear, never fully relocate his focus or resources, and never escape the gravitational pull of the centralized family unit. He must remain geographically and financially predictable, easily tracked, and perpetually monetizable. This is the ultimate form of strategic neutralization. Consider the psychological conditioning that reinforces this trap. Society, through media, social approval, and economic incentives, creates intense shame around the concept of the solitary, unattached individual past a certain age. The man who prioritizes his mission, his work, or his strategic freedom over the perceived obligation of commitment is labeled selfish, immature, or emotionally deficient. This is the societal defense mechanism against autonomy. The collective is terrified of the person who proves that stability, happiness, and power can be achieved outside the standardized contract. The moment you choose your strategic freedom over the manufactured comfort, you are not just breaking a personal contract. You are challenging a core tenet of societal order. You become a visible threat, an undesirable example that undermines the loyalty of others to the system. The social ostracization that follows is not personal. It is political. We must conclude with the Machiavellian solution to this predicament. The prince must recognize the cage before entering it, or if already inside, must calculate the exit with cold, surgical precision. The lesson is simple. True power is never ceded for comfort. The prince, or the strategically minded man, must recalibrate his understanding of strength. His power must not be derived from his position within a conventional structure, but from his competence and self-sufficiency. If society needs to trap you in a relationship to neutralize you, your counter-strategy is to become indispensable through value, rather than predictable through submission. Machiavelli's most essential lesson is that power is derived from options. The trapped man has zero options. He is constrained by debt, obligation, and predictable needs. The truly powerful man cultivates options in all domains: financial liquidity, adaptable location, a network of strategic allies, and, crucially, emotional self-sufficiency. This independence does not mean coldness. It means strategic, emotional control. The prince knows that emotional vulnerability, when used without strategic intent, is a leverage point for enemies. The man who chooses autonomy understands that his affection and commitment are not commodities to be freely given to secure acceptance, but highly guarded resources to be deployed only when they serve his highest strategic objectives. The society wants you weak, entangled, and focused on internal domestic conflicts rather than external strategic competition. The path to liberation requires choosing the difficult truth over the comfortable lie. It means accepting that true respect, the kind that translates to power, is earned through demonstrable results and competence, not through conformity to social norms regarding domestic life. When the state sees a man who is financially robust and emotionally autonomous, they cannot easily threaten him. They cannot use legal frameworks designed to cripple the debt-laden, nor can they use social shame against the man who defines his own worth. His freedom is his shield. The prince in his strategic solitude is capable of seeing the whole board. He is not blinded by the daily demands of domestic obligation. His energy is fully dedicated to the acquisition of strategic advantage, the building of his fortune, and the defense of his autonomy. He is feared not for his temper, but for his profound capacity to achieve his objectives unimpeded by emotional or financial entanglement. The ultimate Machiavellian principle here is the appearance of necessity. The man must make his independence appear necessary for the health of the entire ecosystem. His value must be so high, his competence so undeniable, that society reluctantly accepts his autonomy because his contributions are too important to lose. He moves from being a trapped consumer to an indispensable supplier of value. This is the only form of sustainable freedom. So, how do we move forward? We must internalize the ultimate lesson. The cost of the cage is the dilution of your power. The reward of strategic freedom is the total unimpeded application of your will to your most important mission. This requires a level of courage that few possess, the courage to stand apart and risk the profound political loneliness that comes with rejecting the standard path of domestication. The choice is stark: remain predictable, comfortable, and neutralized, contributing to the stability of a system that profits from your smallness. Or choose the path of strategic autonomy, embracing the discomfort of independence for the sake of realizing your maximum power. Society needs you trapped. Your future requires your freedom. You must decide which master you will serve. This entire strategic blueprint, this deep dive into power dynamics and societal control, is for those who recognize that the greatest chains are often forged in gold and promises. You are now armed with the awareness. Knowledge, as Machiavelli would attest, is the first step toward power. Now, take a moment to reflect on this profound realization. We are building a community of strategic thinkers who refuse to cede their power easily. We want to know that you are committed to this path of radical autonomy and competence. Declare your intention now. Type this phrase in the comments below. My autonomy is non-negotiable. This simple action affirms your understanding of the strategic cost of submission. We deliver the hard truths of power every week, ensuring your strategic mind remains sharp and focused. Subscribe to this channel right now. Secure your place among those who operate at a higher level of awareness. Hit the like button on this video. Ensure this crucial strategic knowledge is delivered to others who are still searching for the exit door. Next week, we are diving into a strategic deep dive that will reveal the single most important rule of acquisition in the modern era, a principle so fundamental that once you understand it, you will redefine your entire approach to influence and success. You will discover the dark calculus of human nature that separates those who merely chase fortune from those who command it. Do not miss it.